go. Rec Room is a really special game to me. I've been playing since November of 2019, but I only feel like the game has gotten worse over the years. Like how Rec Room has entirely lost their original vision for the game, how terrible some parts of their monetization are, how awful the UGC side has become, and many more things I want to talk about throughout the video. I want to use this video as sort of a way to spill all of my thoughts that I've been starting to have about Rec Room over the years. There are just so many things wrong about this game that I really want to get off my chest. I want to start off this video by going over Rec Room's 3 company values: when in doubt, build it, iteration is quality, and it's a small world. These are values that Rec Room claims to go by for every decision that they make as a company. However, some of the stuff they did really makes me question if they actually go by these values or not. However, let's go back. Let's go back to where it all started. I want to give you a little bit of a brief history of how Rec Room first began to get you up to speed on Rec Room's original vision for the game and what it was like back then. Rec Room, or should I say Against Gravity, was co-founded in April of 2016 by Nick Fott, Cameron Brown, also known as Gribbly, Dan Kroyman, Bile Oren, Josh Werley, and John Bevis. All of these people used to work at Microsoft before founding AG, with Fott and Gribbly most being known for working on HoloLens. Gribbly had a solid history in game development as well, with him working at companies like THQ, Activision, and even EA with some of the Mercenaries games. In fact, you can actually hear Coach's voice lines in the game because Amy Lee, her voice actor, VA'd one of the characters.
North Korea is a quagmire, the Allies are stuck in it, and it's all because of this man here.
Red flag taken. Red flag returned. Red flag dropped.
On April 8th, 2016, Gribbly would upload a post on r/GameDev Classifieds asking for artists for a certain VR game they'd be working on, and just a month later, on May 12, 2016, Against Gravity would begin their first phase of beta testing with a Reddit post where he would introduce to us what Rec Room was and a request for people to join in on the beta. With that singular post, dozens of people signed up for what would now be one of the most popular VR games on both Steam, Oculus, and PSVR. In short, the beta was a tremendous success for Against Gravity and allowed them to keep developing Rec Room for when it would finally release into early access on June 28th, 2016. Against Gravity decided to make the game take place inside of a college campus, which in my opinion is a near perfect setting to make a VR social game. The locker room acted as the main social hub for people to mingle and play with each other, on top of acting as a way to traverse between the different Rec Room originals, which at the time were called activities. However, in 2017, we would get something different, something unique for a VR social game: the quest for the Golden Trophy. What I love about the quests in Rec Room is how they actually encourage people to negotiate and cooperate with each other, and they're even themed around a school play, which again complement the game's college aesthetic. There are visible stage lights, ropes that bring the enemies down, and even the boss fight in Jumbotron is set in a gymnasium. While AG was releasing more activities and more updates to the game, they would release something that would forever change the course Rec Room was going in: the sandbox machine. Instead of waiting months for Against Gravity to release a new activity to play, why not let people make their own rooms to spend their time in? Even though it was an incredibly basic system for creating rooms, it was a genius way to keep people playing in the meantime. The sandbox machine allowed you to spawn in different props from the different activities in Rec Room, like the paintball weapons or the props from Golden Trophy. There was the Maker Pen as well, which allowed you to make your own custom models using primitive shapes. Later on, Rec Room would double down on custom rooms by removing the sandbox machine and letting you do everything with just the Maker Pen instead. Activities would get renamed to Rec Room Originals, or RROs for short, and Against Gravity would be rebranded to just Rec Room Inc. I feel like 2020 was sort of the turning point for Rec Room. They would become more focused on UGC than ever with keys and consumables, and would be getting more aggressive with their monetization with the release of Rec Room Plus, which is a subscription service that gives you discounts on clothing items and more tokens. And throughout the next several years, Rec Room would only go deeper down this rabbit hole with Rec Room Studio, custom shirts, pop-up shops, full-body avatars, and more. This change in vision can't be more obvious when given AMA number 34, where Gribbly openly stated that they wanted Rec Room to become fully UGC, even going as far as adding custom avatar items. What went from essentially the Wii Sports of VR, something that was super unique and was never seen in the VR space before, to just another Roblox or VR chat or hell, even Fortnite now. So, what happened? Over the past several years, one of the main things I've noticed about Rec Room is how far it has strayed away from its original vision for the game. From what was this bustling and alive college campus with different sports and activities you can play with friends, to this mangled mess of UGC features that just so happens to be set in a college campus, so desperately wanting to be like the others. In AMA number 34, Gribbly openly stated that they want everything that they made to be UGC based, like its economy and even avatar items.
The future that we see for Rec Room that we feel is really sustainable and is going to be a great blend of an amazing creative achievement, an amazing technical achievement, as well as a sustainable business, is to build a radically cross-platform social UGC experience.
If I'll be honest, this new vision kind of makes me sad. It really sucks seeing a game that used to be this different from the others turn into this shameless wannabe of other metaverse games. Rec Room used to be its own unique thing, with it being set in a college campus, the ROs, its art style, and so much more. Now, it's trying so hard to be like its other competitors that it almost completely lost its own identity. To truly highlight Rec Room's vision for the game back in 2016, I want to show you some interviews and podcasts that Nick Fott was in.
I think some of the most fun ones I've seen were the basketball and the basketball hoop. We walked in the other day and people were playing horse with it, which was pretty amusing. We've seen people do all sorts of crazy, weird things with the darts. The darts have some very strange behaviors that the users love to manipulate and exploit. And yeah, I think a lot of people just feel very comfortable being goofy and dancing around and just having an overall good time. It just doesn't seem like people are, extremely self-conscious in this mode, and I think it allows for some really special social interactions to happen.
Rec Room's original goal for the game was for it to just be fun. All they wanted to do was make a fun and enjoyable VR game for people to appreciate. The game wasn't nearly as bloated as it is now with so many UGC features because it knew what it wanted to be back then. Just a simple and enjoyable social VR game and nothing else. One of the things I really appreciated about Rec Room back then was how much it took advantage of the fact it was in VR. For example, you can literally shake people's hand to add them as a friend, fist bump them to party up, put your hand in front of their face to block them, look at your wrist like a watch to open the menu, and you can even physically cover your mouth to mute yourself. The game used everyday hand gestures to make the in-game world so much more believable and immersive, and it fit near perfectly with the college aesthetic Against Gravity was going for at the time. The 3D UI Rec Room released in 2017 was near perfect for VR use as well. The vibrant colors it featured flooded the game with so much charm and joy, and the buttons were really responsive as well, even at really fast speeds. Another thing I liked about the game was how nearly everything they made sort of revolved around the game's college aesthetic. A great example is the fact that the maker pen is supposed to be a glue gun, and also the art direction for CV1. Every single chip they made actually looked like a computer chip with the barcodes, the gizmo text, and the bits at the end you use to connect the chips. On the other hand, CV2, as good as it is, has none of the charm that CV1 had. Obviously, it isn't that big of a deal since CV2 is supposed to be a professional tool, but it's something I noticed with other stuff in Rec Room as well, like... we gotta talk about the lore. The lore, if you could even call it that, in Rec Room is a confusing mess. It barely knows what it wants to be, and it's so incohesive with whatever's going on with the Roomverse, and whatever the hell elsewhere is. It's impossible to really tell what's happening because of how cryptic and mysterious everything is, even for people who are actively invested in the lore. Gribbly even openly admitted that the lore is solely meant to sell more clothing items in AMA 34.
Is the lore actually going to lead to something instead of just selling cosmetics?
No. But I don't think it's central to the promise of Rec Room. I think it's pretty peripheral. I think it has been mainly used as a way to kind of make the avatar items more interesting. And I think it's been pretty clunky. I don't think we've done a great job of it.
Back in Rec Room's golden age, all of this was different. All that was going on was that the game took place in a college campus, and the fact that Coach essentially owned the campus and the RROs. That's it. It was great for a VR social game like Rec Room. It did its job by getting the people talking and still being grounded on the college aesthetic. And that's all that Rec Room really needed. I hate how all of this new lore strays away from what Rec Room was originally supposed to be, with the Roomverse and everything. This all ties into this new vision that Rec Room has for the game mentioned in the AMA I talked about earlier. They want Rec Room to become this radically cross-platform social UGC experience, including transitioning the older RROs like Paintball to the UGC rooms. And no. Rec Room, you built yourself on this single vision and aesthetic that so many people cherish and love, and you're just going to throw that away for the sake of UGC? Do you really want Rec Room turning into this soulless, shameless wannabe of Roblox? If Rec Room keeps going in this direction and straying further and further away from the iconic college aesthetic, why even call the game Rec Room anymore? Over the past half-decade or so, Rec Room has been cranking out UGC feature after UGC feature after 2019. CV2, custom shirts, Rec Room Studio, creator compensation, advanced creation mode, Rooms 2.0, and even UGC avatar items? Don't get me wrong, Rec Room Studio is a great tool for making custom rooms, and I see it as an amazing way to introduce people into game development. But as good as it is, nothing can beat or even imitate that distinct style and charm the Maker Pen has. Especially with tubes, people have used the Maker Pen in such creative ways that I never would have thought of before. And Rec Room Studio kinda just sucks all the life out of custom rooms, with assets that don't even fit Rec Room's art style and how inconsistent some of these rooms can be. All of this only makes me feel like Rec Room has been prioritizing UGC features over the stability and polish of their own game. Rec Room, at the moment, is in shambles. Nearly every single update Rec Room has released recently has had at least some volume of bugs and glitches that have only made the game worse to play. There was one bug where the login screen on PSVR was flipped, making it impossible to log in unless you move in real life to press the button, and there was another where explosions were broken, making Isle of Lost Skulls impossible to complete. Both of these bugs have been in the game for weeks, if not months, before getting fixed. This is partially because Rec Room has a schedule of releasing an update every single week, making it insanely hard to test and patch out bugs before they're set into the wild. Honestly, I wouldn't mind at all if Rec Room only did updates every month, giving them more time to polish up the game and fix any bugs. Another thing that Rec Room has gotten so much worse in other than its own vision is the game's monetization too. Back in Rec Room's earlier years, the game wasn't monetized at all. No in-game currency, no in-app purchases, nothing. That would change in early 2018 when Against Gravity would introduce the merch booth in the locker room, and, more importantly, the token. These were used to purchase cosmetics, consumables, and more in-game. You can also earn tokens from playing RROs and completing daily challenges for activity boxes. From these activity boxes, you can either get 10, 50, 100, or 500 tokens in a single box, which, if I'll be honest, is very generous for a free-to-play game. And the highest the clothing item ever costed was around 5,000 to 8,000 tokens. However, there was no option for players to buy them with real money, so Rec Room was riding off the backs of investors to keep the game running for the time being. If you don't know, investors pour money into a game or product to not only support it financially, but they also expect to get something back from it. Why pour thousands of dollars into something that you're not going to get any value from? Anyway, a year later, on February 14th, 2019, Rec Room decided to try to monetize the game by making tokens purchasable after this statement made by Gribbly in Rec Room's first AMA.
Microtransactions are not inherently good or inherently bad. It's really about how you do them. And so one of our company principles is it's a small world. And what we mean by that is we always think in terms of long-term relationships. Whether it's with players in the community or whether it's with partners that we work with as a company or whether it's people who work at Against Gravity on Rec Room. Please hold us accountable to doing it in a way that is not exploitative and that is reasonable. And, the thing that we're looking for is we don't want anyone to regret spending money in Rec Room.
With this statement, Rec Room promised us that they wouldn't use any exploitative or predatory monetization methods, and even told us to hold them accountable if they start getting too greedy. We have tried. We have tried to get your attention with the dozens of Reddit posts and Discord messages, yet the only excuse you gave us was that you needed to make money to keep the servers up. Now, don't get me wrong. I fully understand that businesses and companies gotta make money somehow in order to stay afloat, keep the servers running, pay your employees, and all that. But the fact that you need to make money doesn't justify how you make it. It's the same thing as robbing a bank because you can't pay your bills. It's unethical and generally a bad thing to do. One of the things that Rec Room has done to keep the game profitable was introducing Rec Room Plus, which is a subscription service that gives you more tokens and other perks like free clothing items and more outfit slots. And despite popular belief, I don't mind Rec Room Plus being a thing. It's a great way to support the devs and you get quite a lot of value for just $8 a month. However, it's what Rec Room decided to do afterwards that really bothers me. Let's start with one of the main reasons people are so upset with Rec Room: the raising of the prices of clothing items in-game, or as some people in Rec Room's community coined it as, Recflation. Over the last several years, Rec Room has continuously been increasing the prices on their items, making newer items near impossible to get for free-to-play players. This isn't a small problem either. Back then, new items used to cost only hundreds of tokens, with the highest being in the thousands. Nowadays, nearly every single new item that has been released costs thousands of tokens, with the highest being up to nearly 30,000 tokens. Take the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collab, for example. A single set of clothing items can cost up to 59,040 tokens, making those some of the most expensive items in the entire game. If you do the math by averaging out the different values of each purchase option for tokens, that will cost you around $102 worth of tokens if you don't use Rec Room Plus. This was unheard of for the Rec Room community and only had them thinking, who in their right mind would pay nearly double the amount of a AAA game for a set of cosmetics that you can only use in a single game? The only people I can really see buying this are regular subscribers to Rec Room Plus, huge creators in the game, and children who are practically addicted to Rec Room. But at the same time, I am not too surprised by this pricing, because if I understand correctly, the companies that Rec Room partners with also get to say in how much the items cost, and with this, they're partnering with Nickelodeon of all companies. The first time the community really started catching on how much the prices were increasing was with the Amulet of Elsewhere, which was 20,000 tokens alone. Do the math again and you find that it's worth nearly $35. And you're paying that much for a literal necklace in a video game that not many people will even notice anyway due to how small it is. Rec Room's way of justifying its price was to have certain sections in these lore rooms that you can only access if you have the Elsewhere items. And not only does this fail to do anything because you can always just glitch walk through the barrier anyway, but this breaks the entire point of why cosmetic items are a thing. To not only let the players customize themselves, but to also serve as a way to monetize a game without making it pay to win or pay to enter. A solution I thought of for these increasing clothing prices is to actually use the star system that Rec Room has had for clothing items again. And by that, I mean releasing cheaper items on top of the more expensive items to give players a sense of choice instead of only releasing items that cost premium prices. By doing this, players will not only have something that they can actually afford and save up for, but they'll also see some cooler items they can get if they either grind harder or spend money on tokens. At least on paper, it's a win-win situation for both Rec Room and the game's player base. And on top of Recflation, have you noticed how many storefronts you're seeing in the Rec Center now? Like, there's this one time where we had the storefront for the He-Man collab, the one for the lore items, the normal merch with you see in the Rec Center, and even the food court if you want to include it. This is why I'm starting to think the rec center has turned into this place solely made to advertise collabs and sell you clothing items rather than being a place to actually mingle with other players. I go to the rec center to actually talk to people, not to buy clothing items. You could argue that they already were advertising events and whatnot in the rec center, but it wasn't ever this down your throat with entire buildings to garner your attention. Don't get me wrong, these look better than anything I can do with the Maker Pen, but is this really necessary? Another complaint that players have been having for years are how hard tokens are to get for free-to-play players now. Back in 2020, Rec Room made a change to how activity boxes work, which they claimed that it would make rewards more rewarding by giving you more clothing items and consumables and tokens. So you'd technically be getting more value with these new boxes than you would with the previous system, which only gave you tokens. But the thing is, pretty much every player, myself included, values tokens a lot more than clothing items. With tokens, you're free to buy whatever you want with them, whereas with this, half the time you get useless items like film and cheap consumables like root beer. And Rec Room knows this. They know you barely get tokens from these awards, so not only do they jack up clothing prices to make purchasing items even harder, they also essentially force people to buy tokens instead of grinding them due to how hard it is to actually earn them now. I wouldn't even mind that much if we had the option to only get 5 to 10 tokens, but for every activity box we get. But if I'll be honest, I can get over them increasing the prices for clothing items and making tokens harder to earn. Tokens were stupid easy to earn back then, and I can see that being pretty hard to monetize without making everything 10 times more complicated by adding a second currency. It's a free-to-play game at the end of the day, and they gotta make money somehow. But as I said earlier, the fact that you need to make money doesn't justify how you make it. Before late 2022, Rec Room used to have a weekly challenge system where you can get a weapon skin for completely free if you completed 3 of the 5 challenges listed for that week. This is a great system to encourage players to play the RROs for a cool reward. Although, in November of 2022, Rec Room announced that they would be phasing out the current system by only making them monthly to give them time to work on a newer system to replace it. They excused this by saying how only 1% of the people actually do these challenges. And I have to ask, have you ever considered why nobody's doing these challenges? For one, the small number of people who are doing them very likely care about the game and are as passionate about it as I am. You can't just screw over the part of your player base that loves the game the most. That's how you lose the trust of your community, no matter how you try to justify it. Also, the same few challenges get recycled over and over again for each weekly. Most of the challenges are just complete X quest, play 10 games of Y, or get 5 hit streaks in Z. There's a reason why literally everyone resorts to cheesing the challenges in a private instance instead of actually doing them. The weekly challenges themselves have so much potential to actually be fun and challenging. Here's some I came up with. High five 5 bears in Rec Royale. Bonk every survivor in Make It to Midnight. Complete the cave level in Isle of Lost Skulls without the torch. Get at least an A rank in Stunt Runner. Or destroy 100 terminals in The Rise of Jumbotron. I came up with most of these off the top of my head. I can understand if challenges aren't possible for the recent RROs due to them being made with UGC tools, but it's very possible for the other RROs, right? Another reason nobody seems to be doing the weeklies are the rewards themselves. The only thing the weeklies have been rewarding players are weapon skins, which most of the time are repeated for players who have already been doing them for a while. Something that would actually incentivize people to do the challenges would be, you guessed it, tokens. Given how much players are already craving tokens with the new reward system, it'd at least be nice to give out like 250 to 500 tokens in place of a weapon skin for them to spend. Cause that'd be reasonable in place for a weapon skin, right? I wish. To add insult to injury, immediately after they announced the turn from weeklies to monthlies, they decided to start reselling the weapon skins in the pop-up shops and merch booths for literal thousands of tokens. This was such a huge slap in the face by Rec Room. Imagine putting in the work to earn an item years ago, just to have it re-released with a price tag slapped on it to allow people access to these items that they would have otherwise not bothered to obtain. Like, no. You can't just suddenly set a value on something that was originally set as free. And if your intention with this was to make the weapon skins more accessible, why put yet another barrier in front of it by selling them for prices that free-to-play players can only dream of affording? In my opinion, a reasonable price for the weapon skins would be around 500 to 1,000, maybe even 1,500. Not 3 to 4,000 or hell, up to 25,000 tokens? And I'm not exaggerating. At RecCon 2023, Rec Room re-released a bow skin, which to my knowledge was a very old weekly skin, potentially one of the first, for 25,000 tokens. If you do the calculations from earlier again, you'll see that it's worth $43.17. Nearly $10 more than the Amulet of Elsewhere. One staff at Rec Room claimed that this price was because they wanted to maintain the value and rarity of the item, and on one hand, he kind of has a point. Pricing it at the same price as the other skins wouldn't really fit how rare the item is, but if you truly want to maintain the original value of the item, why would you even sell it in the first place? This goes with every other item. By selling it, you're changing the value of the item since you're literally setting a value on something that used to be completely free for some players. At this point, I am convinced that Rec Room decided to phase out weeklies solely to resell the weapon skins in the stores, given how badly they handled it. And as one final way of adding salt to the already massive wound, they decided to axe the weeklies altogether with no replacement at all, which was implied and promised to us in the original announcement. In this announcement, they claim that only 0.2% of active players actually complete the challenges. And why do you think that is? Nobody does the weeklies anymore because the challenges are repetitive, rewards are the same, and on top of that, people forget about the challenges because they're monthly now, and it doesn't help that it's barely even advertised to newer players. And they say they can't make any new challenges because the code is old and is a mess. And while I understand that it's obviously really hard to deal with code like that, that shouldn't make it borderline impossible, at least for the time being while they work on a new system, right? They also go on to say that setting up the weeklies takes time by a dev to set up, but again, it can't be that difficult to automate the weekly system by selecting a random set of challenges in an already released skin to give the community something to do. I feel like the whole issue about the weeklies being removed isn't really an issue about the weekly challenges themselves, but more of an issue of how much we can trust Rec Room now. They promised us that they'll have a system in place by the time they fully phase out weeklies, yet it's been a whole year and a half and we still barely have any updates on the state of weeklies. Even if they said they're testing out a new system, can we really trust them to actually put one out in a reasonable amount of time? Personally, I highly doubt they'll ever get to refining the weekly anytime soon, especially given how they treated them in the past. On top of the weeklies, there have been several other really dumb things Rec Room has done. Just look at how they dealt with the invasion events. Despite the awfully written lore, the first couple invasion events were actually really good. They got the community together and actually encouraged them to explore different rooms to collect orbs, which were also used to progress the event and get different items. The tier pass it used was actually really easy for players to complete too. It was way better than something like League of Heroes, which did absolutely nothing with the main gimmick of the event, which was how people were split up into different teams. And Rec Room noticed the overwhelming support for Invasion from the community, so they took the seemingly most obvious move and did it again. And again. And again. Yeah, it'd be an understatement to say that they milked the hell out of the Invasion events. These events were not even months apart from each other, and with each one they only got harder and harder to actually complete them. By the fourth and final invasion, it was next to impossible to complete it without spending tokens. By doing this, Rec Room thought players would spend more tokens on the event due to FOMO, or the fear of missing out. FOMO is that anxiety you get when you're not in the know or missing out on stuff like certain events, information, or experiences. For example, say that your friends just watched a TV show that you haven't watched yet and are talking about it in front of you. Obviously, you want to know more and be involved in the conversation, so you're inclined to watch it as well. That's essentially what FOMO is, and most multiplayer game companies have got this concept down to a T to abuse. Rec Room included. Now again, don't get me wrong, I'm completely fine with items being limited time, but it's the way that Rec Room handled them that bothers me. Nearly every single item re-released now is set as a limited time item, on top of it costing thousands of tokens, forcing free-to-play players to spend money on them to get it. But what players don't know is that these items aren't truly limited time. Every item that they release into pop-up shops will end up releasing in the future. The everyday player doesn't know this, and will end up feeling like they wasted their money and tokens once they see that an item they bought gets re-released again. The only stuff that the player can actually see are just a timer and a button to buy the item, with next to no mention about it ever returning. Sure, they have a page on their support website that says this, but how many players are going to go out of their way to go onto the support website and search for that specific article, let alone know that Zendesk exists in the first place? I personally never knew that this existed until a former Rec Room staff sent a link to it on Rec Room's server. Why not put a poster or something in the rec center, or at least put a disclaimer on top of the store page that openly explains this? And did I mention how Rec Room literally encourages gambling with their gift cards? You see, when you buy a Rec Room gift card, you have the chance to get one of 5 items shown on Rec Room's website. But here's the catch. You can't buy these items regularly through the store. If you really want to get one of these items, you have to repeatedly buy gift cards over and over again until you get what items you want. Now, there's a chance that Rec Room just thought of this as a nice way to reward people for buying the gift cards, but at the same time, given what else Rec Room has done to make more money, I can't help but think that they know that this is gambling, and they know that impressionable kids will want a certain item to repeatedly gamble on until they get what they want. This isn't even mentioning all the little things that Rec Room did to stuff their wallets, like removing temporary hair dye, placing the highest amount of tokens you can buy in the front, not supporting foreign currencies on RecNet, making it harder to buy stuff from foreign countries, and more. Monetization like this even spreads to the game's Rec Room Originals. My Little Monsters, one of Rec Room's most recent RROs, is the very first RRO to have full-on microtransactions in it. Sure, Make It to Midnight, Rec Room's previous RRO, also lets you buy the game's currency for clothing items, but no RRO ever before has gone to the extent that MLM did. It uses these prismatic essences as its currency, which you can use to craft certain items for the game, like decorations and whatnot for your sanctuary. You can get prismatic essences for free by checking in every day to get them, which is in my opinion a really cheap way of getting people to play the game more, and by having your cryptid dig these things in the Evergrown, which is where you gather all your resources from. However, there's a catch. You only get a limited amount of prismatic essences every day. Granted, they've done the same thing with tokens for years now, but I wanted to point it out anyway because when you do reach that limit of prismatic essences, they throw this pop-out at you telling you to wait till tomorrow because you apparently got too many of them. And even though you don't need prismatic essences at all to complete the RRO, the more I played it, the more egregious I found the monetization to be. The game gets stupidly grindy and repetitive, and I mean it. There's a part in the game where it wants you to collect over 1,000 of each material to get the black variants of the cryptids. Barely anybody has the willpower to grind for this long just to get a different color of something they already have. And I'm starting to think that MLM is this unnecessarily grindy just to sway you into buying the prismatic essences. And just so you know, the game does let you spend them so you won't have to grind as much. And in the case that they're doing this to make the game longer, this will only sway people away from playing it because the average player will look at this and likely just give up on trying to get it. Just cranking the values up like this is not how you extend playtime. By doing this, they ruin the thing you're going to be doing in the RRO the most, either to lazily increase playtime or to make you spend more tokens. The rest of the gameplay is such a mixed bag as well. On one hand, I really like how MLM tries to mix different aspects of games like Animal Crossing, Pokemon, and the Sonic Adventure 2 Chell Garden into one game. Here, you have a sanctuary where you need to take care of your cryptids, but you can also decorate it by crafting props and decorations for it. This adds quite a bit of content to the game, which I like a lot. However, there's no true incentive to actually do these things because the entire game relies on fetch quests and gathering minerals. The whole thing about decorating your sanctuary or even raising your cryptids does absolutely nothing for the gameplay. You can complete the entire thing by having your main cryptid as a toddler and having the bare minimum amount of decoration in your sanctuary. The only time you would actually do this stuff is to progress through the game because it says to do so on the top left. Seriously, one of the side quests has you crafting every single decoration and putting it into your sanctuary? What if, instead of only using decorations for a useless side quest, why not make it so adding more decorations actually helps level up your sanctuary, which can then let you upgrade your axe and pickaxe like it does right now? And to bring the whole raising your cryptids thing into play, have them level up faster the higher you upgrade your sanctuary. Then, once you've fully leveled up a cryptid, you can bring them over to the monster storage and be rewarded with either extra minerals or even prismatic essences. It's so easy to connect the different features into one gameplay loop, giving actual value into decorating the sanctuary and raising your cryptids. Also, the game holds your hand for the entire game until you get your sanctuary up to 5 stars. At that point, it's less about actually playing and enjoying what you're doing in the game, but more of you following a bunch of fetch quests to see what happens next. Animal Crossing, at least New Leaf, because I haven't been able to play New Horizons yet, handled this perfectly. After the intro where you get your town, home, and whatever else set up, you're just led into the wild on your own, letting you progress through the game at your own pace. It doesn't matter what order you go in either. On the other hand, My Little Monsters entirely relies on fetch quests, where 90% of the game is just talking to NPCs and gathering materials in the Evergrown. Sure, you can do stuff other than the fetch quests, but what if you want to upgrade your sanctuary before doing something like crafting a plushie dispenser for your cryptids? Well, too bad. You have to follow what it says on the top left before doing anything else. I would fix this by following in Animal Crossing steps and removing the fetch quests altogether, and letting you progress on your own after an intro that acts as a tutorial. And if you ever need any help, you can always talk to one of the NPCs to give you guidance. MLM is seemingly supposed to be this relaxing experience where there's little to no real threat at all in the gameplay, so why not embrace that instead of having progress locked behind dozens of fetch quests? Now, the gameplay alone doesn't entirely kill the RRO for me. There are a lot of other things about it that I actually liked. For instance, the visuals and aesthetic. The game itself looks fantastic. The town that the game's main lobby is set in, Cryptid Creek, seems to have a lot of life put into it with the amount of buildings, trees, and there's even an entire park within it. I can tell a lot of effort was put into making it. I love the designs of the cryptids as well, and they complement Requiem's art style a lot, especially considering they're based off of mythical creatures of the same name. The animations look really good too. They all look really fluid with the overlapping action and squash and stretch, which had a lot of life into them. However, there's a lot of criticism going to the recent RROs for taking ideas from other games. For example, Make It to Midnight is just Dead by Daylight with a new coat of paint, and My Little Monsters is just a dumbed down version of Pokemon. I honestly don't mind that much about Requiem doing this for the RROs. It's not that they haven't done this before as well. Rec Royale was released at the peak of Fortnite's popularity, and the older RROs were based off of sports. Which brings me to my next point. I can't help but think the more recent RROs have been straying away from that college aesthetic that was once so prevalent in Requiem's earlier years. Nearly all of the older RROs revolved around sports and actually felt like things you would do on a college campus. After that, Requiem started releasing quests, which were based off of school plays. Later on, Requiem started making more unique RROs like Rec Royale and Stunt Runner, which still managed to find their place. Rec Royale felt like you were in this Boy Scouts program, and Stunt Runner was literally a TV show. It was all so creative, it felt like all of Requiem's content was in this, in-game universe. Jump forward to today, and apparently there's an entire town that raises monsters now. Don't get me wrong, MLM does a great job of sticking to Requiem's general art style, and it looks fantastic, but some stuff like this story could have been changed to be more in line with Requiem's aesthetic. Make It to Midnight doesn't do the same either, but I guess it kinda makes sense because the game is literally just a carnival, so that's probably somewhere near the campus. The game's teasers also revolved around a story of a few students going missing, which is still miles better than what MLM has to offer. I know all of this isn't that big of a deal, like it doesn't ruin the RROs for me at all, but I still just wanted to talk about it because of how much I've been noticing it with the last few RROs. All of this kind of spreads to the game's music as well. Rec Room's soundtrack, to me, is nearly unforgettable. There was something so unique about Rec Room's older soundtracks that just screamed calm and welcoming college campus. And notably with some of their later soundtracks from 2017 and 19, they were just undisputed bangers. Nearly every single one of them complemented what it was used in so well, and they were really catchy too. Perfect example, the Rec Royale theme. The whistles and the trumpet and the drums all complemented the whole Boy Scout setting perfectly. Even the soundtracks for Showdown and Rec Rally were pretty good. However, Gribbly no longer makes the music for Rec Room and now has a music team doing all the music. And I'ma just lay it straight, the music scene in RROs like My Little Monsters and Make It to Midnight are so nothing. They're so generic and don't have what made the other soundtracks so special. Take a listen to one of Rec Room's older soundtracks. Now take a listen to the theme you hear in MLM. Like, this isn't Rec Room to me. It sounds more like a generic royalty-free song you'd see on Roblox rather than something that truly belongs to Rec Room. Not to mention it getting really annoying the more you listen to it. The song just loops between the same few parts that all sound so similar. And has anyone else ever noticed how much missed potential most of the recent RROs have? Showdown only had a single map and Rec Rally was just a disappointment. On top of it only having a single map, the gameplay could have been so much more fleshed out with stuff like power-ups, actual shortcuts, and something to work for other than bragging rights or a leaderboard. This includes MLM too. It could have been so much better as a game if a few things were changed or added. For example, it would be sick if you could bring a friend or two into your sanctuary to show it to them, similar to how dorm rooms are handled. And can you imagine how cool it would be if you could bring your cryptids to places like the rec center or the park? Unfortunately, one of the devs has already confirmed that they weren't able to do this due to memory issues with the game, and because they used RRS to make it. As part of Rec Room's new grand vision for the game, every new RRO is now made using Rec Room Studio and other creator tools. I see Rec Rally as the final true Rec Room original, the final RRO to be made natively in Unity and not RRS. Every single RRO after that just feels unpolished. Like, nearly everything you do in the newer RROs feels like it'll break in one way or another. And as seen with MLM, it could prevent really cool features from coming into fruition. Seriously, I can only imagine what MLM could have been if it wasn't made with RRS. Despite this, I do understand if Rec Room won't be able to do this because I know they can't just do something like making an entire new quest without expecting at least some value from it. But what I don't understand is how badly they've handled the UGC content in the game, and how many people have exploited Rec Room's UGC features for their own profit. In AMA 34, Gribbly asked himself a question that really stood out to me. Is Rec Room in the state it's in now because of their evilness or their incompetence?
Even though you say you'll listen to the community.
I'm trying to figure out if it's more our evilness or our incompetence. Which one do you think is, it's so hard to say which one is more important in that factor.
And honestly, I say mostly incompetence. I don't want to see Rec Room as evil or greedy or anything like that. In fact, a lot of the devs are actually really active on Rec Room's Discord server and subreddit, including Gribbly himself. and I can respect that. I love how transparent he was to the community with the latest AMA going over what Rec Room's new vision for the game is, despite how strong my dislike is for it and how seemingly bullcrap some of his answers were. I know most of the Rec Room staff truly care about the game and its community, except at the moment it seems as if it's being played by awful management and decision making. Rec Room could have handled weekly challenges so much better rather than making a promise to their community, then completely breaking it later on. Same with moderation, and don't even get me started on how horrible the UI is. I'm glad they introduced that 3 strikes policy, but it seems like they only really do anything when they receive mass backlash from it. Same goes for stuff like how unstable the game has gotten, with Rec Room forcing themselves to push an update every single week, even though they manage to introduce more bugs than they can fix. And I know they've been trying to make the game better too, with the introduction of the 3 strikes policy, bringing back featured rooms, creators gala, and they've even started doing some contests again. But at the same time, there are things Rec Room has done that I can only describe as evil, like with their advertisements. They knew damn well that children are a problem in this game, yet they decided to make it even worse by having an ad agency pushing out ads that are mainly targeted to kids. On top of that, there's the game's monetization. I can get over Rec Room jacking up clothing prices or making tokens more scarce so they can stay afloat, but they also took advantage of FOMO with the abundance of limited time items that they can re-release at any time without their players even knowing. Now, I know what some people might argue after seeing this entire video so far. If you hate the game so much, then stop playing it. Nobody's forcing you to keep playing a game that you hate. I don't hate the game. I genuinely love it. I'm making this video because I care about Rec Room and I want it to be better. If I really truly hated every little thing about Rec Room at the moment, I would have already quit this game a long time ago and you wouldn't be seeing this video at all. In fact, Rec Room has been one of the only online multiplayer games that actually stuck for me and had me playing for this long. Fortnite quit within several months. Apex, nope. Fall Guys, not that either. However, I really think I need a break from Rec Room. Over the past year, I've gotten myself so wrapped up in how hard the game has fallen off that it's become one of the only things I can think of, and I just want to escape from it. And this game's community alone is really making me question whether or not I should even keep playing it. Why would I want to surround myself with hundreds of scumbags who only want the worst for others for their own profit? And the amount of children that Rec Room has marketed the game to only makes this a recipe for disaster. Rec Room's community has become one of the worst I've seen in any game, right up next to Roblox. Another thing I could hear people saying or commenting is, you're just nostalgic, and Rec Room hasn't fallen off as hard as you're saying. Yes, I am nostalgic for the old Rec Room. I can't overstate how much I miss what this game was back in 2019. Admittedly, this is mostly cause Rec Room was a brand new game for me back then, so there's no doubt I had a lot more fun. However, another reason I'm so nostalgic is because Rec Room was objectively better as a game back then. The moment I started, I automatically fell in love with how grounded that college aesthetic was. Sure, Rec Room is a lot better as a platform now with better UGC tools, but I feel like Rec Room is forgetting that they were founded on being a social game that so many veteran players know them and remember them for. And now we're seeing Rec Room want to be this radically cross-platform social UGC experience akin to Fortnite, Roblox, VR chat, and more. There isn't any game out there that's truly like Rec Room. It managed to hit the perfect middle ground between something as open and vast as VR chat and a more closed down multiplayer game like Horizon Worlds. Rec Room let you make your own rooms with in-game tools that could do so much more than what any other VR game can offer, yet it still stuck with its own aesthetic, theming, and art style. I know we already have Resonite, which also attempts to hit that middle ground with its in-game creation tools, but one of the main reasons I stick to Rec Room is because of how consistent the game's art direction and theming was throughout the game. The RROs, the avatar items, even community rooms, all had that distinct Rec Room charm to it that we eventually won't be able to have in the near future, and I'll miss it a lot. November 23rd, 2019. The day I got my Oculus Quest as an early birthday gift, and also the day I would first create my Rec Room account. I originally found out about Rec Room from YouTubers like Nathy, Soulfox Gaming, and even Lizzer if anyone remembers him. One of my friends also told me about Rec Room before then and let me play it on his Rift S every once in a while before I got my Quest. And it was like nothing I had ever played before. The art direction, the college vibe, the RROs, the community, the in-game tools, the UI, I adored absolutely everything about Rec Room at the time. Now, this game is just this soulless shell of its former self, wanting to be just like the others by pushing for this metaverse as hard as they possibly can, with all of these UGC tools and even UGC avatar items. Again, I'm really nostalgic for what Rec Room used to be, and I just want it all back.
I find it hard coming back down when I'm this far out, searching for a constellation that we called home. Don't mind, lift off. It gets a little shaky on the way up, but it's just another conversation that I'll let go. I'll let it all go. Call ground control, let 'em know, yeah, it's time to cut the motor as I move closer. So what's the point of closure? Countdown's over, yeah, it's been real nice to know, yeah, it's supernova.
I will never forget the friends I've had, the memories I've made, and how much of an impact this game has made on me. Nearly everything I loved about this game has been ripped from my hands like it's nothing. Weekly challenges, the old UI, the entire aesthetic the game was going for, are all just gone. All because of the incompetence of the devs and the greed of its own community. I will miss every little thing about this game, but for now, I think it's time to say goodbye.